Hey guys, today we're here to talk about Willow, and we're going to talk about her alcoholism and what I think it can tell us about her. And we're going to divide this into two sections. We're going to divide it into the causes and reasons section and what I think is coming in the future section. And we're going to start with the cause and reason. And we're going to split this further into two different ones, cause and then reason. And we're going to start with cause. Cause is pretty simple and easy to figure out. It's not a very complex part of this. The reasoning's boiled down to two things, and one is money. Willow has a lot of money, so she has the availability to go and get alcohol. So this allowed her to cause her alcoholism. And I do think it's probably somewhat intentional. It's not like it was an accident, I don't think, for Willow. This is a very similar field to Crow, but we're going to talk about Crow's alcoholism sometime later. And the second one, and the most important one, which probably causes everything, is her husband, Jacques. Jacques is the main cause for all of Willow's reasons, I believe. He is emotionally abusive. He is manipulative. He is possibly physically abusive. We saw that conversation with Weiss and Jacques, and it did not end well. So I would entirely believe that he is physically abusive. And so these are the two main causes of Willow's alcoholism. Now, why she chose to go into this direction, and I do think there's a reason that she chose it. Well, kind of. We're going to explain this in the reason part. It's going to make more sense in a second. But I don't think this was entirely accidental. And also, the last point we want to get here before we go on is, I don't think Willow is a dumb person. I think she's actually quite intelligent and quite crafty herself. The problem is that she's dealt a hand that she just can't get out of. Jacques is just more powerful in this situation than she is. He has all the power, all the cards, he has all the accounts in his name. So she is dealt this bad hand, and she has to figure out ways to deal with it. And that's what we're going to talk about here in reason. Alright, now on to reason. And just before we begin, I want to make sure that I listened to my last part, and I just want to make sure I did not mean that Willow caused herself to become an alcoholic. That's not quite. I think she was forced into this situation. I'm going to explain it here in reason, but I listened to the last part, and I'm like, I sounded a little off there. So just to make sure everyone's clear on that. I'm not blaming Willow for her own alcoholism. But, moving on, I think it all stems from the very first part here is, number one, she can't actually divorce Jacques. That would be the simple answer we would all think in a normal situation, because, she's in an unhappy marriage and she's possibly with an abusive husband. Leave him. Well, we need to look at Atlas right now and see that that's not really an option. Atlas is a semi-democratic system, but with a very heavy oligarchy bent, meaning the more power you have, the more influence and control you have. And who's the richest man in Atlas? Well, that'd be Jacques Schnee. Meaning that if Willow attempted to divorce Jacques, she would more than likely lose all her money, custody of her kids, and be thrown out into a situation where she is just not able to deal with it. She would lose everything. Now, Jacques doesn't want to divorce Willow because it would damage his reputation, and he's a bit of a narcissist. He doesn't want to admit that his marriage has fallen apart. So they both don't want to get divorced, and so they're stuck in this unhappy situation. So it's already leading to a situation where it's greater chance that she's going to become an alcoholic. So she can't divorce, and she knows he's abusive, so the first thing that she has to do is she has to stay with the kids, which is number two. She has to stay with them to keep them safe. So she's putting herself in an uncomfortable situation to keep her children safe. This is already making it even worse than it already was, increasing her chances for alcoholism again. And then third, I'm sorry, I got lost here, is that because she's in all this uncomfortable situation, but she has to remain there, she has to find a way to numb the pain. And this is where alcohol comes in. It helps calm everything down and just help her deal with the situation that she's been dealt with, because it's very undesirable what she has to deal with. So she's using this to help her get through her incredibly unhappy marriage. But I think there's a fourth reason here, and I think this one is very important, is I think that the alcohol keeps Jacques away from her. Specifically, I think Jacques sees her alcoholism as a weakness and very undesirable, and is kind of like a mosquito repellent. If she drinks and becomes intoxicated, he doesn't want to be around her, which is okay with Willow because she doesn't want to be around him. So she's using alcohol to keep him away from her, and I think this is a way that she does it so she can continue to watch and keep control of the kids, but it's also damaging her relationship with her kids. But she doesn't really know what else to do. She doesn't have the power to force him out. She doesn't have the power to get rid of him or run away with her kids or retake the company. She doesn't have any power, so she's just kind of stuck there, hoping for an opportunity to get rid of him. And while she's there, she has to use alcohol to keep herself safe from him and herself in a situation where she can keep an eye on her kids. I think this leads a lot more to, again, why Willow is actually a pretty smart person. She realized what Jacques didn't like about it, and she's using it to keep him away from her. Now, again, that's just a theory, but I think it's one with a pretty credible chance. But now with both of those covered, we're going to move on to what I think this is going to do in the future, because I think this has big character development parts for her kids. Alright, so we're on to what this might mean for the future and future character development. I believe that Willow's alcoholism will have a huge impact on her kids, especially as they come to the realization of exactly what she did for them and other things. And I think the first one, and probably most impactful, will probably be Winter. Winter seemed to have extreme hostility towards Crow, and we can probably look back on it now and realize why, is that she saw her mother's alcoholism as a weakness, and then confronting another alcoholic, she looked on him with disdain. So it's not entirely surprising, especially if Winter eventually comes to the realization of exactly what Willow was doing while she was an alcoholic. It may change her views and might reunite a more loving relationship between mother and daughter. Just a theory, maybe not. But I think that Winter coming to the realization of what she was doing is probably going to be an interesting plot point. And second is Whitley. Whitley idealized his father, but I think this is mostly because he was unaware of what was going on behind his back. He'd had no idea about the emotional and physical abuse of his mother and sisters. He just idolized his father's, as he saw it, success. I mean, Jacques was the richest man in Atlas. He had to be great. I mean, come on. He was that rich. Of course he was. Well, in truth, Whitley will probably come to increasing realizations, especially with Klein and everyone else backing up exactly what they're saying, that his father was not a good person. And when that comes to realization, it'll be an interesting perspective on how Whitley reacts. And finally, we have Weiss. Now, we've already seen slightly Weiss confronting this. When we saw Willow and Weiss in Jacques' office in Volume 7. And Willow walks in, and I don't think I've ever seen Weiss so uncomfortable. And it really shows, and I think one of the voice actors came up, and I can't think of her name right now, talked about it, in that Weiss is not ready to deal with these extreme situations. She's an adult now. Weiss is a full-grown adult, but she's not quite ready to deal with these extreme problems. She hasn't had to deal with them. And she kind of froze up like a deer in headlights. And I think this is an interesting perspective because it's going to give us a chance for Weiss to actually, explore and see what these are like. And increasingly try to figure out exactly who Weiss is. How does she deal with it? And how did her family come out? I think that Weiss confronting her family about alcoholism, about being so distant from one another, is going to be an interesting idea. And the whole Schnee family is probably a big plot of development for us all. Not to mention, I think they will also give us good perspective on world building. Well, that's it for today, you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this discussion. If you have more to add to it, leave it down in the comments below. I believe that Williows Alcoholism is a subject that we might be coming back to. But until next time, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. You can check out my social medias in the links down below. You can like and subscribe, and I will be discussing more things later on. Until next time, you guys, I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.